Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third and last webinars of our 3 series. And today we're talking about the 5 pillars to backup and redundancy. My name is Matteo Castellani. I'm your host today, Cloud Solution Architect for IONOS UK. So today we're talking how secure. So last session we talked about how to secure from the live system for your environment point of view. Today, we're talking of something a little bit more complex and a little bit more hidden than normal, which is how to secure the data that you back up in your infrastructure and how to have a proper backup and a proper plan on how to recover your infrastructure in case of disaster. Today, we're talking about the 5 pillars to backup and redundancy, because 5 are the steps, in our opinion, that you need to take to make sure that you have the correct strategy, and they're divided on the first 2 when we're talking about planning and defining objectives, and then the last 3 when you're actually doing the actual engineering bit, where you stop talking a little bit about doing the backup and redundancy and you actually stop doing it. So without further ado, let's start with the first pillar. So as first, business continuity plan is the beginning of the journey. The business continuity plan is a way to define and a way to understand the needs of your business. The business continuity plan includes system and software availability. So how do you keep the application running, how you keep your system running? What if there is a fault? How do we fix a computer that doesn't work anymore? How do we fix a computer in the finance unit, for example? The second part of a business continuity plan is how do we assure business continuity? So how do we make sure that the business keeps working even during a disruption, which could be caused by an upgrade of the system or could be caused by an unforeseen event? So what are the applications that we need to take care of the most, and what are the systems that we need to take care of the most? And then last but not least is the disaster recovery bit. So in case of disaster, of a ground zero, how do we restore all the system and how long it would take? And let's say that this is, as I said before, it's the beginning of the journey to understand what is needed and what is not needed in your plan, and is also a good way to understand, especially with the second pillar where we define the objectives, to understand how is it going to cost, this business continuity plan, and if it's really doable or not. Once that we define how do we fix the system and software availability, what the application call for the business continuity, and what is our plan in terms of disaster recovery, we also need to define the objectives, how to measure it. And these 2 objectives, the most common, are the RPO and the RTO. So these are the objective on you build your strategy on top of. Once you define the strategy, per application or per service, you define RPO and RTO. But what are these 2 metrics? RPO is the recovery point objective. So it's basically how old is your data when you're recovering it. It's kind of an internal SLA where you guarantee the internal customer or you or your business that your data, once that you're recovering it, is not going to be older than blah. And there's 2 examples on the slide. If I back up, if I do a backup once a day, I got 24 hours RPO because my files are not going to be older than 24 hours. Or if I do a DB dump of every hour, I'm going to have 60 minutes RPO. There are different kind of data in your infrastructure, I'm sure of that. There's going to be file, there's going to be deployments, there's going to be database updates, schema upgrades. RPO needs to be tuned by each one of your data and processes. There cannot be one RPO for everything because multiple are the system and the application that ensure your business continuity. Multiple type of data, I'm sure of that. So multiple needs to be the type of RPO that you have in your business continuity plan. The second part, the RTO, is the recovery time objective instead, which is how long before I can see my data online again. So with the RPO, they create the two measuring unit, base measuring unit, where you can see if your recovery plan is working or not. So once that you say a recovery point in time, a recovery point objective of an hour and an RTO of 1 hour, you are expected to see after a disaster or an unforeseen circumstance, after 1 hour, you want to see data that is maximum 2 hours old, for example, because you have an RPO of 1 hour plus 1 hour that takes you to brings you online, makes a total of 2 hours. And it's important to understand and test the different location when you're gonna create a backup strategy, because when we're talking about RTO, we're talking about the time that is needed to recover this information and put it back on the system again. And you need to weight it against the type of data and application and process that you have, but also there are lots of different kinds of storages out there in cloud that allow you to make cloud backups. We're talking about software as a service, platform as a service, or even just infrastructure as a service, because you can do your backup in multiple ways. And it is really important to know the type of backup that you're doing and if it's appropriate. And this type of objective, the recovery time objective, is what is guarantee you that to measure how long before you can actually retrieve your data from your storage. Really important, because from the next point of view, from the next pillar, we start talking about the technicality on how to build your recovery and backup strategy, and this is going to be the fundamental objective that you have to look at every time that you decided, yes, I'm going to back up my data here, or I'm going to use this agent to back up my data there. Third pillar, we just say, is the technical implementation. So let's make it happen. During this time, when it means that you already created your business continuity plan, you define it, you've seen it there is reasonable in terms of cost, in terms of objectives in RTO and RPO, and now it's time to actually start using all the backup things that are out there, all the backup tools that are out there to make it happen and to fall in between your objectives. And there are multiple ways of executing this plan. Obviously, there's backup agents, so there's third-party software that can be for free, could be offered to you from your cloud provider. You may have to pay a license to do it. It's a ready-to-go tool and a dashboard that helps you to monitor what's happening. Could be something simple like a backup script that you write yourself, and something that does, backups the database or saves the file into a different folder and then zip it and then upload it into a different file system. And it could be on automated file system snapshot. There's a quite fancy these days, where you do have all your file in a folder, and the file system is taking care of creating a snapshot every time there is a delta, and is dividing it in hour, minutes, and is the easiest way to have something that is always updated. It doesn't work really well with the database, but with normal file system, that is the key. And the third pillar, it's as easy as that. You will have to select, well, it's easy as that when you're saying it, but when you put it in practice, obviously, you have to measure all of this: backup agent, backup script, automated file system snapshot, and all the other options that are out there, to understand if can meet your requirement in terms of RPO or RTO. And this is why they're so important when you're writing the plan, because, and they're called objectives because it's what you have to aim at every time. So it's important that you test it, and it's important that you verify that the performance is up what you're looking at. The fourth pillar that we're going to look at is hardening your setup. Backup requires protection 24/7, 365 days a year. And everybody's really concerned when we're talking about the security of one infrastructure or multiple infrastructure, or patching the software, patching the systems. And very few are actually thinking that backups are as fallible in an infrastructure if we're not taking proper care. And you can see nowadays lots of people talk about ransomware. The British NHS got completely locked down because there was an issue with ransomware. Someone encrypted all the files and asked for money back. There's small and medium businesses think that it's okay not to take too much care of the backup and the security of the backup, but then they get burned when they need to restore a file and they find out that everything has been locked up by some random guy and asking them a lot of money. So hardening your setup is how do we tighten security? Well, it's very similar tighten the security of a backup as tighten the security of an infrastructure. So first of all, stop using personal accounts to run script if you're running script, or if you're running an agent, make sure that the agent is using a system user, not an administrator or a real personal account. Ban and abolish completely passwords. Always use keys and certificate for authentication and authorization. This eliminates the risk that someone randomly trying password can actually gain access to your systems, because keys and certificate cannot be guessed. They're too long to be guessed. Let's face it, it's just not possible. Make sure that you replicate your backups, or make sure that every time that you copy your backup outside your system, there's always 2 or 3 copies of your backups in different location or in different system, or use the cascade system. So you copying your backup from your server to another server and from the servers to another type of file storage, so that you have a trace of your backup. And if some of this fails, you do have another one to recover from. And use one-way operation per system user. So we said to tighten security, do not use personal account, but use system users to run backup and restore. Make sure that when you run this backup and restore, or if you have automatic procedure doing backup and restore, make sure that no user is a super user, and that no user can do more than it needs to be done. This is because a user that is writing data very often has a key and a certificate saved on the same server, because it needs access to that place, to that remote endpoint to save the backup. And this is when the permission are to open, it's a classical mistake. Someone can log in, can gain access to the server through the application, which can always happen. It's nobody's fault about that. It's just sometimes people are better at finding bugs than actually building programs. And what happens is that there's a key and a certificate that gives this person access to your backup. And if you tighten the security properly, these users are going to only be able to write backup and not be able to read what's in there, not be able to list what's in there. And instead, if the permission are to open, this person will have full access to your backup and potentially delete them all or encrypt them all. And then, the classic ransomware schema where they're going to encrypt all your data and ask you for money to get them back. Same thing when you're restoring procedure shouldn't have writing permission on the endpoint where your backups are, but it should just be able to read the file and export the file out, and that's about it. And these are few tactics that you can implement to make your backup a little bit more secure, because they still part of your core data. They still part of your business. And the backups, even if we're not thinking of, but it's just a static version of your live infrastructure. If you worry that someone can get into your infrastructure and steal your data, you should be worried that someone can get into your backup repository and steal your data. That's why you should really look into this action if you want to secure your backup platform as best as possible. And last but not least, the plan it, test it, and measure it. So cloud as a business continuity plan enabler. Why? Because many industry training their personnel to react in case of emergency, like aviation, nuclear plant, military operation, emergency response unit. And this is something that is well known, because pilots, they do train when there is a fault on the engine. Nuclear plant people, they train to react to issue at the nuclear reactor. The military people, they do perform military operation, and as well emergency response units, they train on the emergency they're there to follow. And this is because training people reduce the response time, reduce the way of thinking, but it makes it become kind of an automatic action when you have to respond and to do something. And this is something that company that have IT at their core should think about. It's not something that has been always used in all the companies. To be honest, I haven't seen many companies do that. But when there is an issue, you want to be sure that your people know exactly what to do and you have a measure of the time. So business continuity plan, the 5 pillars that bring you to backup and recovery, it's not complete if you do not test it regularly. When regularly doesn't mean once every week or once every month, it could be once every 6 months. But why you need to test it regularly? Because your infrastructure changes. There's new things that are going on. They're all things that are coming down. And the way that you building your system, the way that you're running your application, that you ensure continuity of operation is having objectives, the recovery time and the recovery time objective and the recovery point objective. So you need to be able to have your personnel knowing exactly where the backups are, where the data to recover is, and what the procedure is to put it back online, and being able to do it into that specific time frame that you ensure the business is it possible to do. And this is what the 5 pillars to backup and redundancy are about. Backup, redundancy, backup, and recovery. Being able to perform a business continuity plan after having a planned, put together, hardened, and then tested and tested and tested again. My name is Matteo Castellani. For today, it's all for our webinar. Thank you for watching. And if you do have any question for us, please get in touch with our chat. It's on our website. And please ask for me, and I'm going to be more than happy to have a chat with you about what we discussed today.